Guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. So today we have Aeldari versus the Black Templars. So let's go ahead and check out the armies for this 10th edition battle report.
Yes, and so if you like the video, share it if you want to share it, comment if you want to comment, or say we got something wrong, and more to come. So for today, I'm going to be playing Black Templars. I used to play them a lot in 9th edition, but they've changed heavily. So the overall idea, this is a 1990 point army. The overall idea is mass infantry, push forward, kill everything, with vehicle support for rear fire, or supporting fire. And for my warlord today is High Marshal Helbrecht. I have Grimaldus as well, the Emperor's Champion, and two Castellans, but they're Primaris Lieutenants, essentially. That's how they function. And they also have, one of them will have Tannhauser's Bones, the one that, well, the red one will. And so I'm not fully sure on this. The Emperor's Champion is not a named character, so I think I can give him his relic. So I'm giving him Sigismund's Seal. If not, if I'm wrong, then he could just go to a Primaris, but I'm playing it as the Emperor's Champion has it. Then, for troops, two full squads of Primaris Crusaders with 4 power fists. Sergeant has a power weapon, and all the neophytes have chain swords and stuff, so big squads. Then I have a unit of Sword Brothers. They all have power weapons. One has a thunder hammer and a pyre pistol, and one of the big sergeants and stuff, one of them will have a master-crafted weapon and pyre pistol. After that, Redemptor Dreadnought, and then a Gladiator Lance. This is the Black Templar version, which means it has a multi-melta. And then, of course, a Land Raider, but not just any, Land Raider Redeemer. I really want to test out the Overwatch and, like, tank shock of these models. And that is my 2,000 point army.
Right, you guys. So for my 2,000 points, it's actually 1,970, just because the way that points work now are so kind of awkward, where you either have too many or too few. So I couldn't spend it on anything else. So anyway. So the main idea for this army is I'm kind of just going through, because now the army works rather differently. Like, you wouldn't think that it is, but it does. So I took kind of some jumpy units, some really shooty units, and then some kind of core units, because they really did a change on the Guardians, which I thought was super interesting. And so kind of like the key units, like the main like shooty units, are obviously the fire prisons in the back. But I have some units that can really jump around. Guardians, if they're sitting on an objective, give me fate dice now, which is pretty cool. And Storm Guardians can actually, they have sticky objectives, so they sit on one and then they can leave and I still hold it, which is pretty cool. And then I took a couple of characters. So the Autarch, for he does a thing with fate dice, and I gave him the what is it called? An enhancement. And then I have Osserman, who really buffs Dire Avengers, and he lets them use a stratagem that's already been used for 0 command points, which is pretty cool. And then Fuegan is just always a beast. I figured I'd take him. I really kind of wanted to mess around with the buffs that the Phoenix Lords have with their little guys. Now, unfortunately, the Autarch can only jump in on Guardian squads, which I thought was kind of ridiculous, but anyway, so I'm just kind of trying to test a mix of different units' abilities, so that's why I took as little of each kind as possible, just one squad, except obviously Guardians, because I need things to sit on objectives. But yeah, so that was kind of the idea, really just to kind of get a vibe for 10th edition Eldar, and we'll see how we go.
Alright, so for the mission, we have Hammer and Anvil deployment. We have delayed reserves for the mission rules. Not going to affect me. And then Serval Skulls. So this is the first time we got it. Basically, if you control the objective, you get to move it up to 6 inches. And at the end of your turn, you get a victory point depending on how close it is to your opponent's deployment zone. So this is... it favors the Black Templars, maybe. But we'll see what happens. Alright, so for secondaries, Black Templar, storm hostile objective. I mean, the way this game is, or the Serval Skull things, I think this is going to be very obvious. And engage in all fronts, because I'm pushing forward and some of my units are staying back to lay down fire. So, like, this perfectly fits. Tactical has its uses, but I score almost nothing with them, so I'm going with fixed. So that's it for the Black Templars. What about you?
Yeah, so I chose Cleanse because I have a lot of units, so all I need are 2 of them to cleanse an objective, and I get 4 victory points. That I assume is at the end of my turn. I actually didn't read it that far. But anyway, and then I have Engage in all fronts because this just seems like the kind of mission where that is the easiest one to do, on top of the fact that I'm Eldar and I'm super mobile and blah blah blah. Yeah, so those are my 2 secondaries. I think they just work with the mission and the amount of objectives on the table, but you know, we'll see.
All right. So for deployment for Black Templars, I just found spaces where I could put stuff. That's pretty much it. 2 giant blocks, vehicle support in behind, but I put the Land Raider Crusader in a precarious position, which I don't know. I am trusting to its strength, and that's pretty much yeah. That's it. That's all there is for my strategy. What about you?
Yeah, I wanted to keep my vehicles in the back, so that way they couldn't get shot. And and that was pretty much it, actually. I just kind of spread out my units a little bit. I have some units that are pretty mobile, so they can kind of just disappear and reappear. But because of the mission, I wasn't quite sure how Deep Strike works with Strategic Reserve, so I was like, I'll just have everyone on the board, because half of my army could be in Strategic Reserve or Deep Strike. So I was like, but Eldar are pretty mobile, so I'm not super worried about it. So yeah, I just kind of spread out my units, kind of stronger firepower points on each of the ends, and then the units I couldn't decide what to do with, I put in the middle. And yeah, that was pretty much it for me.
Alright, so who do we think should go first? Why don't you start this off? Us with like our third game, my fourth. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how far you can move up the board. But I'm not super worried. So I don't know. Going first wouldn't be too bad. It would give me some nice positioning. But going second means I would probably be able to do a lot of shooting and stuff. So yeah, I don't actually know. Maybe going second. Yeah, I'm gonna say going second. But going first wouldn't be terrible either.
Yeah. So for me, with the way cover works and stuff, I'm actually pretty well insulated. So first turn, only my Land Raider is in trouble. But if I get the first turn, my Gladiator Rancer will get the first shots, and if I get the first turn, I will be moving up towards objectives and stuff, getting a lot of cover and taking the board quickly early on and getting first strike. So because of how my army is, I really need to get up the board as fast as possible. And so the way I see it, I need the first turn to have the best chance of success. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
So essentially, we both want non-competing things.
Oh, I'm pretty tanky. Alright, and
I guess we'll find out how tanky.
6.
Looks like you're going first.
Yep, alright. Black Templars, turn 1. Alright, pre-game. My opponent's Shroud Runners got to get a free Scouts move up to the point. And me, my Templar vow for the game is Uphold the Honor of the Emperor, which is army-wide 6-up Feel No Pain. Which also applies to my vehicles, if I'm reading it right. Alright, so, since the back objective doesn't matter, and I really don't know how tough I am, I'm like, you know what, screw you, I'm charging forward with everyone and everything. And that's pretty much it. So, Crusader squads get to reroll Advance and Charge, and so they basically just move forward as best I can, and I do have cover, because all these lines of sights and everything, it's ridiculous, for the green squad as well. And yeah. Right, so for shooting, the Land Raider Crusader mag dumped the Shroud Runners, and with its Flamestorm cannon, its multi-melta, and all that other stuff, I killed all of them and brought one down to 1 wound. It's because they had stealth, so it was -1 to hit, and I rolled poorly on my Flamestorm cannon. But he's there. And then my Gladiator Lancer targeted his Fire Prism with his long-range 72-inch gun, and he just straight up killed it. He all hit, all wounded, and I got to reroll the damage, and so, because it's native to his rules, and I did 16 damage, so that killed it outright. It exploded and killed a Warp Spider. Then my Redemptor Dreadnought targeted his Fire Prism up there with his Macro Cannon, the heavy one, and did nothing to it because it's toughness 9 and my weapon is strength 9, so it failed. And then because it was hazardous, I rolled a 1 and I took 3 wounds. Then the rest of his fire went into the Guardians that was there and just slaughtered them. There's like almost none of them left. And that was my shooting phase. So for the charge phase, the Land Raider Crusader charged his surviving Shroud Runner. Alright, so for the fight phase, the Land Raider Crusader just crushes it. 6 attacks, hits on 4s, strength 8, absolutely slaughters it. And that was the fight phase. Alright, so for points, nothing on primary. Storm hostile objective. I did take the objective from my opponent, but it only works on the second battle round and further. Engaged on all fronts, I do not have 3 or 4 zones. So nothing so far.
Alright you guys, so for movement, I moved my Autarch and Guardian forward. I moved my Fire Prism out from behind cover. My Howling Banshees ran forward. My green Guardians just waddled forward a little bit, as did my blue Storm Guardians. They just kind of went straight forward. Then my Dire Avengers moved into cover, so that way they can see through and shoot and do all that fun stuff. And then my Warp Spiders moved around, and then he overwatched with his Land Raider, killing 7 out of the 10. No, 6 out of the 10, but 1 was also already dead, so. And then my Falcon tucked up and around right behind it. Yeah, my Ranger stayed still. That was the movement phase.
Oh, and my Land Raider Redeemer overwatched his Warp Spiders, and with his Flamestorm... Oh, yeah. I just want to remind people, it did happen well.
Alright, you guys. So, for the shooting phase, a little bit of stuff happened, not a whole lot. My Bright Lance shot his Redemptor Dreadnought, taking it down to 3 health left. And then my Guardian and Autarch actually shot at his... the big blob of guys in front. They actually killed off 1 Neophyte. Then the Fire Prism finished off the Redemptor. He could have done a bunch of damage to the blob, but I was like, the Redemptor probably needs to go more. And then the Howling Banshees and the Swooping Hawks shot at them, killing off, I think, 2 more Neophytes. Then the Ranger shot at Grimaldus. He took 2 damage, or 1 damage. He took something.
He took 1 damage because of Feel No Pain.
There you go. And then the Green Guardians in the back had a little bit of range, not a whole lot, but they shot at the Land Raider Redeemer, doing 2 damage, I think. Mm-hmm. Or no, 1. Yeah, 1 damage. And then the Storm Guardians shot at the Red Squad. They were able to take nothing, actually, I don't think. And then the Warp Spider shot at the Land Raider Redeemer, giving it 2 mortal wounds. And the Dire Avengers can't actually see anything because of the building. So that was it for the shooting phase. So for the charge phase, my Howling Banshees charged his green squad. They got in. And then my Autarch and his Guardian and weapons platform charged, and they got in. And so everyone got in. We'll see how that goes. Yeah. Alright, you guys. So for the combat phase, it was not good. The Autarch swung. He didn't do a whole... I think he killed 2 guys, maybe. And then the Guardian actually didn't do anything. Unsurprising. Then the Banshee swung, and they killed... I don't know, 5, 6 guys maybe? No, 4 guys? 5 guys. Either way. They killed a couple of guys, not a whole lot. And then he swung back and killed both squads. so not a great exchange. And that was the combat phase.
Yes. And for everyone asking, I used a stratagem called what was it? A Vicious Riposte, and so it's a 4-up. My guys get to swing back after the opposing squad has finished, but because I have Uphold the Honor of the Emperor, it turns to a 3-up. So that's why.
Alright, you guys. I got no points. That was my turn.
Alright, so for the movement phase, command phase. So, command phase, Grimaldus is giving his squad 5-up Feel No Pain. And then after that, my Land Raider didn't move. Primaris Sword Brethren got out. Gladiator Lancer moved up. Helbrecht and his squad took the center. Grimaldus and his squad just moved up. And that was the movement phase. Oh, and my opponent used a stratagem to allow his Swooping Hawks to move. Yeah. Alright, so for the shooting phase, I then had my Grimaldus' Primaris squad shoot his pistols at the Swooping Hawks, and I totally forgot that I made them Oath of Bowment, and I only ended up killing one. Then, Helbrecht's Primaris squad mag-dumped with pistols against the Guardians that were in front, killed 6 of them. Then, my Primaris Sword Brothers mag-dumped the Warp Spiders that were down there, did absolutely nothing. Then my Gladiator Lancer fired at the Guardian squad that was heavily damaged and just wiped them out. And then my Land Raider Redeemer shot his remaining shots at 3 Warp Spiders and just wiped them out. And that was the shooting phase. So for the charge phase, Helbrecht's squad charged the snipers. Grimaldus' squad charged the green squad, made it in. And then the champion and his sword brethren charged the Dire Avengers. And that was the charge phase. Alright, so for the fight phase, so Helbrecht's squad moved first. Actually, it wasn't Helbrecht's squad, it was just Helbrecht. He used his sweep attack with 12 attacks, and he just soloed the entire squad of Dire Avengers, or no, of snipers. And that was it. Then, my opponent interrupted with his Dire Avengers squad, which had Osserman, and the Dire Avengers did 3 wounds and killed one of my guys. But then, his Osserman did a ridiculous amount of damage and just slaughtered like 2 of my other sword brethren outright. It was ridiculous. And one of them has 1 wound left. They each have 3 wounds, but man, that was ridiculous. And so then my swings back. My Primaris Sword Brethren with a Mastercrafted Power Sword killed a few. Guy with Thunder Hammer killed 3. Emperor's Champion with Precision Attack swung on Osserman. Did 4 damage or 4 wounds to him. He had a 3-up invulnerable save, and he failed 3 of the saves, and it was 3 damage each. So the Emperor's Champion slaughtered Osserman, and that was that fight. And then Grimaldus' squad swung, and Grimaldus swung, killed 5. The Chain Swords swung, killed everything else, and I couldn't consolidate from there. And that was the fight phase. So for points, so off camera, we moved the objectives forward. And so I abandoned one, but I moved it forward towards my opponent, and so I gained 2 points for 2 objectives. And yeah, I'm winning with 14 points.
Alright, you guys. So for the movement phase, my Fire Dragons popped out, and then they kind of scooted up and along. My Falcon jumped up on top of the terrain here, and then he overwatched it, and he missed everything. And then my Fire Prism scooted towards the middle, but still kind of backing away. And my Dire Avengers did not do anything. So that was the movement phase. Alright, you guys. So in the shooting phase, basically I funneled down his 2 vehicles. So my Falcon started it off shooting at his Gladiator Lancer, and he did 7 damage to him. Or was it more than that? It might have been more than that. Either way. But then my Fire Prism finished it off. It blew the mess out of it. It did like 12 damage in well, technically in 2 shots, but anyway. And then that left his Land Raider Redeemer, so I shot with Fuegan, and Fuegan did 12 damage in his 1 shot to it. I think he saved 1, maybe,
yes.
So 11 went through. And then the fire dragons only had to do, was it 2 or 3 damage? And they struggled, but it just barely got over the line. I mean, it just barely. It did like 7 extra damage, but still. It was like 2 shots that went through. And so, yeah. And so that was the shooting phase. I cleaned out his vehicles, which I don't know if that's great or not. That's his long distance shooting, so we'll see what that means. Yeah. Alright, you guys. So for the charge phase, the fire dragons charged. They rolled a 6, they got in, and that was pretty much it. You guys, so in the fight phase, Fuegan started it off swinging on the Emperor's Champion with the precision stratagem. Now two went through, but the Emperor's Champion has a thing to negate one, and then he had a 6-up Feel No Pain that he saved one, so he only took 2 damage, which was unfortunate. But you know, whatever. Then the fire dragon swung and they did nothing, and then he swung back on Fuegan doing 4 damage. And then his sword brethren swung on the Dire Avengers, killing 4 of the 5 that were left. And then the Dire Avenger Exarch swung back, doing nothing. And so that was the sad fight phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, I got 2 points for engage on all fronts. Or is it 4 points? 2 points. Either way. So I got a couple of points there, but that was it. I haven't been able to control any of the primaries to move the servo skulls, and I have not been able to do cleanse, especially now that most of my army is dead. So that was it.
Yeah. Alright. We decided to call it there because at that point, Black Templars would take the board, and Aeldari would not be able to do anything to fight them back or play the objectives, which would have to be incredibly... Like, they have to take the board in the middle end with bodies and push it, but they don't have that. Alright, so MVP, LVP of the game. So, LVP is going to have to be the Redemptor Dreadnought. I mean, it did kill a bunch of Guardians, but it blew up in its own face and then died immediately to the first salvo from his fire prisms. And I completely forgot he existed by the end of the game. And that's the only reason he's here as the LVP, because he had a very lackluster performance. So LVP of the game. Then for me, pretty close tie between the Redeemer and the Emperor's Champion. So the Land Raider Redeemer, his Overwatch is incredible. When the Warp Spiders moved up, they could have seriously destroyed the Land Raider or like nearly killed it, but because of the new Overwatch rules and stuff and because of his Flamestorm Cannon, he just deleted them. And so almost none of them were left. And yeah, and if I would have played it smarter and it did not overwatch with my Lancer on that other turn, he would have overwatched the Fire Dragons and he probably would have still survived the shooting phase. I don't know about the combat phase, but because the Fire Dragons just barely finished him off. It was just 2 wounds, so Fuegan did almost all the damage, and then there was just 2 wounds left, and only 2 wounds got through from the other Fire Dragons. So if he would have killed off most of the Fire Dragons, he probably would have survived. Then we have the Emperor's Champion. It's a bit hard to say because like Helbrecht, Grimaldus, they tanked a lot of shots, they did a lot of good strategic stuff, and then the giant blocks of Crusaders did really well. But, well, like they just didn't get that much action. And so this is more of like, who's cooler? A cool Land Raider Redeemer doing cool stuff, and the Emperor's Champion. He killed Osserman. He almost killed Fuegan. It's just my opponent rolled a bunch of... He took 6 damage from his invulnerable saves, and then he made a bunch of Feel No Pain. So the Emperor's Champion nearly killed 2 Phoenix Lords. That would have been a crippling blow. So he did like the coolest stuff. So in the end, MVP... He delivered the Emperor's Champion safely, but he killed a lot. Emperor's Champion killed really hard to kill characters and damaged heavily. Honestly, when it comes to points, I will say the Land Raider Redeemer because he did control the objectives to push it forward to give me points. The Emperor's Champion moved forward, so based entirely off that, Land Raider Redeemer is my MVP. So what about you?
Yeah, so I think for LVP, I don't know, it's kind of weird. They feel a little different in 10th edition. Mm-hmm. But I think Banshees honestly are the LVP straight up. They just really didn't do anywhere near enough damage that they needed to. They don't have any rerolls or anything like that. And I don't even know if you can give it to them now that all the buffs are like character based, and so the only person that can attach them is Jane Czar. So that was a little weird. But yeah, so for this battle, it was definitely Howling Banshees, LVP. MVP, I don't know. I think so. It's between my Fire Prisms and, well, Fire Prism, because one took it in the face in the first turn. So just one very specific Fire Prism. He destroyed the Redemptor Dreadnought. He finished off the other tank of yours. I forget his name.
Lancer.
And so with his focus shot, he's doing massive damage. Flat 6 damage. And so I never got a chance to try his dispersed one, which is, 2 damage, and it's pretty good against Space Marines. So he did a lot. And then the Fire Dragons, they really were only around for 1 turn, but obviously they melted that land rate. Well, Fuegan did, but I imagine if I didn't roll as bad, the Fire Dragons also would have done tremendous amounts of damage. So I think I'm leaning towards the Fire Prism, honestly. I think the Fire Prism is the MVP of this one. He was just more mobile. He was able to actually regularly shoot at stuff, and he took something off, I think, every turn he shot.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what I would say. Fire Prism is the MVP of the game, with a close second of the Fire Dragons.
Alright then. Alrighty then. So, final thoughts on the game and the armies. So, as far as the game went, the mission really favored me. Just charge forward, take the objectives and push them forward. So the mission really did suit me and was good for me. And the only thing I'll say is that my backline was not as tough as I thought. These Fire Prisms just deleted them. I was expecting the Redemptor and the Lancer to just sit in the back and get me the engage on all fronts, but they just died nearly instantly. Although the Lancer did kill 1 Prism. The giant blocks of troops, they did really well. As far as the game goes, there really wasn't that much strategy in this game. It was just move forward, clobber things, keep moving forward, clobber things, and that was it. Yeah, I'm beginning to notice that like all the strategic choices are in deployment and the first 2 turns of movement. After that, it's just slap fights against each other or mopping up. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, what do you think of the game?
Yeah, it was interesting. So the mission definitely didn't favor me, but I don't know. It felt like the Eldar just died off really, really easy. Maybe I put them in bad positions or whatever, but I don't know. They feel squishier in this edition. Because even like Fire Dragons in the last edition are toughness 4. I think there's 1 or 2 other units that were toughness 4. But everything is just a flat toughness 3. Even the Phoenix Lords are toughness 3. So that was a little weird. But I don't know, it felt like they didn't do as much damage this time around. But I don't know, it could just be an off game, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge really what works when we have access to everything. I do know that the Eldar right now are like going with heavy Wraith Knights, heavy vehicles, heavy hitters. They more like taking the vehicles and the giant robots is essentially it. That's what I've seen so far.
The army buff is that every unit gets a free reroll to hit and wound roll.
Oof.
So I can imagine you'd go higher damage, lower number shots.
Making them count, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you have the fate dice that helps buff those.
When you do get to use them, yeah.
Yeah.
Like actually,
they don't have all the rerolls. I was looking at like the Farseers and the Warlocks, and all their stuff are buffs now, but each one only like gets specific abilities. So like the Farseer on Skyrunner gets certain abilities that he can buff a unit he's attached to. And then the one on foot gets a different set, and then the Warlocks get one set of things, and then the Warlock Skyrunners and then the Conclaves get all different abilities. And so it's kind of weird how that all works. So like a lot of the rerolls are kind of gone It feels like.
Rerolls in general are, with few exception.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, but that was always something that they were really big on. But I guess they're trying to balance it out with you get one reroll per unit for hit and roll, and then you have all those fate dice.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Well,
I guess I gotta refigure out, because I think it's enough of a change that it's actually like a big deal, like a big change for the Eldar.
Yeah.
At least to me, I don't know.
Yeah, as far as the Black Templars goes, their units are very expensive. Like, it's 320 points for this 20 brick of Black Templars. And, like, the characters are super cheap. Like, Grimaldus is 120, and he's the most expensive. Helbrecht is only 105. The champion's like 80.
I think it's because now they can only buff one squad. Like, they only do to one squad.
Yeah.
And I think even my characters, like the Phoenix Lords, were like 110, 115.
Well, with the damage he did to the Land Raider, he definitely was worth that points.
Oh, yeah. He made his points back so quick.
Yeah.
The one turn he did stuff. Yeah, the characters are definitely cheaper because they're only affecting... but of course the Phoenix Lords can only go in their Aspect Warrior squads, and the Autarch can only go in Guardian squads.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
The other thing is, like, I was really needing CP to be able to survive and do stuff. I had to use my stratagems constantly, and I was completely out all the time. So, like, Helbrecht, Grimaldus, very strong characters, but... So the champion, Grimaldus, and Helbrecht have to be the leaders of the squad. The Castellans can join squads because they're essentially lieutenants underneath the captains and stuff. But I really wanted to bring a marshal, because that's the captain, because he gets the free... This squad gets to be targeted with a stratagem once per turn for free, kind of thing. That'd be very, very helpful for me, but like I just couldn't find space for them. It's like the rest of my army was pretty much taken care of. The Sword Brethren, they were pretty strong. I mean, they faced Osterman, so it's hard to say, like, getting +1 attack or +1 damage at the start of every fight. Their access to all power weapons and stuff. So these guys are very strong, but they're super expensive.
Well, I mean, that's kind of Space Marines, though.
So it's really hard to gauge. The Emperor's Champion is just a character killer, but outside of that, he's not really that strong. Essentially,
he doesn't have enough attacks if he gets bogged down or something like that.
I mean, he has a sweep attack, so he has 10 attacks, strength 6, AP -2, 1 damage. But most of his stats and stuff is against 1 damage. So, but he has to lead a squad. He can't get. I can put a Castellan with him, but it's. Black Templars is essentially a horde infantry army, but they have some very powerful tanks, the Gladiator Lancers and stuff like that, because they get them with melta-guns, so they have their own versions of that. So it's difficult to say really, like, what should be done or stuff. It's like if you want to run the character stack, you have to run a lot of infantry to be able to have this strategic CP regeneration or use. Because Helbrecht doesn't have that CP stuff, neither does Grimaldus, so it's a bit hard to say. And I forgot, again, one other ability. The Castellans give my whole squads a fall back, shoot, and charge. That's another thing, but it never came up.
I think that's probably, to me, the biggest change is that characters are single unit buffs, and then the way that they split up and change their abilities and assigned who they can actually go with has been... probably that, because it's literally just like they become just another piece in a puzzle. It's like before, like okay, well, they'll take care of this chunk of units or whatever, but now it's like, no, this unit has a very specific buff that needs to go with this unit, and so I don't know, it's interesting now, but so it's just super different, and Eldar particularly, like, they already lived and died on their characters, so now, so that their characters only affect one squad at a time, that has been very interesting to see how that works.
Yeah. I wonder if GW will release a stratagem for like 2 CP that allows a character to rejoin another squad that doesn't have anything.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's too niche of a thing. Ah, well. Alright then, so GG's. A lot of learning pains, clearly. Yeah, so... Alrighty then, so that's it for this week. We'll see you next week. Alright, bye.